Well, folks, the year 2022 is upon us. For most in this country, Biden's Building Back Better policies, like anticipated, has brought no positive change to our country and has coupled an anti-conservatism agenda with a communistic future ahead for every citizen of our great nation. As 2021 ended, and as tradition holds, many across the country rendered New Year's resolutions to bring about change and improvement into their lives ahead of the new year. Americans have long failed on these pledges. From weight loss to quitting smoking, most in our nation cannot hold themselves accountable for their actions and look for others to do their dirty work. These mentalities have paved the way for the Democrat Party and its liberal leaders to destroy this nation of ours. Today, I break down just what's in store for America in the year 2022. If you thought 2021 was rough, you haven't seen anything yet. You are listening to the Closet Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Wright. Let's get started. Just nearly 1 year ago, America was stronger, was safer, and had a promised future under the leadership of then President Donald Trump. Today, Americans are more uncertain about their futures and that of their families. During his election campaign, the COVID-19 pandemic that Joe Biden so criticized Trump is now worse today than a year ago. And for Democrats, there is no incumbent Republican president to attack, but instead now it is the anti-socialists that they so vehemently hate and despise. This past week, while vacationing with my family in the great state of Florida, ran by Biden's nemesis, the great Governor Ron DeSantis, I came across a social media post of a past church congregational member of mine from years past. And in her liberal-laden rant, she publicly chastised and ridiculed the non-vaccinated members of our community for her daughter contracting COVID. A teenager and fully vaccinated, her daughter was diagnosed and suffered COVID during the Christmas holiday break, but with a booster to boot. Her mother is letting it be known that it was the fault of the unvaccinated as to why her daughter was sick and was having to endure such a horrible Christmas holiday. You heard me right. In typical liberal fashion, you are either with them and comply with their demands or you are against them. And hell has no fury like a liberal scorned. Now, for all you listening out there, you know I couldn't just let this set. Being an unvaccinated person, I hardly shared this young child contracting and even transmitting COVID. And I wasn't going to sit idly by and accept responsibility for something I, nor any member of my family, were accountable for. During my exchange with this troubled individual, who just so happens to be employed with the North Carolina public school system, I was attacked on my stances on not only COVID, but gun rights and abortion, both of which are not even remotely associated with the topic at hand, her daughter being sick. Folks, here comes the scary part. This supposed educator stated that the federal government's role was to interfere with public policy during any emergency, which quickly had me retort with a 60-second history lesson. Ladies and gentlemen, the role of our federal government is detailed as minute in nature per the U.S. Constitution and our very precious Bill of Rights, which protects our God-given freedoms from being trampled on by, you guessed it, the federal government. Like so many plaguing the minds of our great nation's youth, this disagreeable educator refuses to believe in the facts and instead firmly considers that thousands of federal tyrants in Washington, D.C. have the legal right to dictate our everyday lives, and that the president has the right to dictate our everyday lives, or Dr. Fauci has the right to dictate our everyday lives. These lost and lunatic expressions and ideologies are dangerous to our nation's existence and the young minds under their supposed guidance. I tried my best, ladies and gentlemen, to explain that our great nation was founded on individual freedoms and states' rights. And if you chose to abort your fetus, God help you, or you wanted to engage in homosexual marriage and polygamy, or live in liberal free-for-all locations, there are places for you. But that my home state, like so many others across the nation, do not agree. Our federal government has no right to dictate how you, me, or someone else chooses to live. Yes, we have established laws, and if broken, there are penalties for such. As explained in the Gospels, I do not believe in lawlessness, but instead free will. And if you choose suitably, you will live well. If you choose evil, you and those around you are destined for doom. But folks, as we prepare to ring in the year 2022, it is this mentality that we must all fully understand. Look at what your federal government has done to you this past year, or for the last 2.5 years for that matter. You cannot afford to survive. The dollar in your purse, your wallet, or your bank account is worth less with each passing day. You cannot afford groceries. You cannot afford to eat out, pay for education or health care, gasoline in your vehicle, and all the while the government demands more and more from every one of us. Just this week, it was announced that under Biden's Building Back Better mentality, any transaction that exceeds $600, which also includes apps like Cash App, Venmo, and Zelle, will automatically report to the IRS. You will get a 1099 statement. You will claim that on your tax returns. So not only does Uncle Sam, or Daddy Biden in this case, want to know how much you make each year, but also they want to know how much you spend and deposit into any account in your name. But because the meek, the lazy, and the dependent in this country refuse to take accountability for themselves, they have opened the door for today's Democrats to take charge. Under dictatorial policies, they will control every aspect of every citizen in this country. Our freedom is evaporating right before our very eyes under the guise of national emergencies. But folks, this has been the practice of every successful tyrannical regime throughout history. Many in our country either too dumb or too lazy to care, for if they are only waiting for their next chapped check to be delivered in the mail. Folks, I wish everyone well on their resolutions for 2022. I know they're hard. But how many out there listening today chose to be a member of the conservative crusade so desperately needed for not only this year, but for a generation to come? America needs you now more than ever. Our country needs your fight. Our country needs your commitment. Our country needs your zeal to overcome and undo the failed policies of Joe Biden and his fellow liberals. For 2022, I chose freedom. Who's with me? I'm Eric Wright, and you've been listening to the Closet Conservative Podcast.